Good evening, everyone. Welcome to LFC Transfer Room. I'm here tonight, joined by Spencer and Carter to discuss the latest developments around Liverpool Football Club. We'll be obviously discussing the game at Emirates that took place last evening. We're gonna also touch on the Brighton games that we're gonna play this week, and on who we might see on the pitch. Hopefully, a certain Italian player that I'm dying to see back, but we're going to get into that later. If you're new around here, make sure to please subscribe to the channel, and of course, leave your thoughts in the comments. We love to usually take comments from the chat and kind of have them integrated in these conversations. Good evening, Muse. Good evening, all Liverpool FC. Good evening, Richard. Good evening to everyone in the chat, everyone on Twitter as well. If you're over on Twitter, make sure to come over to YouTube. It's a bit easier to navigate, I say. But before we get into that, Spencer, how's your afternoon?
It is going really well. I can't complain for a Monday afternoon. I'd prefer it be even better because Liverpool won yesterday, but it was a tough game and it was on the road against a really good side. So you know what? I can't complain.
Yeah, fair enough. We're gonna get into our thoughts on the game a bit later as well. I guess as people say in the chat, we shall take the point. Yeah, I'm actually gonna this one's gonna be interesting to talk about. It's been really fun as long as it lasted, but I thought it just had to come at some point, didn't it? Curious, it's probably gonna be Van Nistelrooy now to take on at least until the summer, and then we're gonna have to see, I guess. New manager bounce. I wouldn't be completely surprised for them to have a charge at top four or something like that, and then fool everyone at their back, and then the same old, same old. So we're gonna hopefully see that unfold once again. Carter, how about you?
I'm good. Yeah, just a bit of a mad day of football news today. All the Man United stuff, and then the Amorim stuff comes out, and then it's the Ballon d'Or stuff today, and Real Madrid throwing like a tencha tantrum. I'm getting my words stuck, but yeah, it's just a bit of a mad day. Like I'm excited for a non-La Liga player to win the Ballon d'Or. I would rather it been Salah, Mane, Virgil van Dijk in the last few years, but hopefully it gives someone like one of our future players a bit more of a chance. So yeah, it's been a good day so far.
Indeed. Well, yeah. If we're speaking literally, yeah, Brighton next is what's next. I was mainly thinking of, discussing and how this Arsenal game puts things into context a bit, mainly because we know this was probably the biggest test so far of the season. If you'd agree, some people might disagree. I don't know, but we're gonna get into that. One thing that I wanted to, yeah. Carter, seems like Muse wants to get your input on this. Well, Thomas Frank at United rumors. I know you've been a fan. Hey, I've also said it, to be fair. When we heard Jurgen leave, I've also said that he's in my top three managers. Still think. Well, I'm actually gonna let you respond. Why not?
I think it would be a smart decision. I think the only thing is from the fan base, I don't think he'd get as much leniency and like support. But I think objectively, I think if anyone's watched Brentford, and they had loads of injuries the other year. I think everything at Brentford is down to all the issues are kind of down to the quality of the players. Like when you look at all the things, like they are quite good defensively. They are like set pieces wise, they're really good. Like they use like whatever little margins they can gain on any other team. They're so smart. They are almost, I think, from that side, they're one of the best run. And I think bringing in smart people who Ten Hag says, we want to go up and down. We want to go up and down. We want to do all this crazy stuff. I don't count the last game because the red card got overturned. Thomas Frank will go, well, that happened, but we can do this and we can do that. And I think he's he doesn't have maybe the standing yet, but I think he's someone where, because the squad isn't full of Galacticos and it's not full of guys on £600,000 a week, he could actually go in at this point because Dallo can't tell him to F off. Like, these players don't have the stature really and the sort of standing with the hierarchy to disobey him. So I think at this point they can actually go for someone like him, and I think it would be a good appointment.
Yeah, well, it wouldn't be as nice because actually I always like the guy, but well, it is what it is. It was the same with Ten Hag, honestly, and then he kind of turned into a meme. But yeah, let's move on from that and get into stuff that interests us most, I guess. We're obviously going to get into the Arsenal game now. Before passing it over to you guys, I would, I'm going to have my say on this. I think I was I was very conflicted yesterday when the game ended, mainly because at the beginning of the game I thought if we get a point, I'm good with a point. I'll take a point ahead of the game. And even looking at it, I think they were, they had more of the ball. I think they were a bit more dangerous on a bit, in like, even though the XG doesn't necessarily show that, I think they were a bit more dominant than us, mainly because we weren't really at our best yesterday. I feel like in a lot of moments where you'd feel like we'd maybe have a bit more of a push, it just felt flat, lackluster at moments, and it didn't look like one of our best performances. I think even Slot said it after the game that Arsenal were the first team to be better than us, and well, yeah. To be honest, that's the only reason, and not necessarily the only reason. The way I feel disappointed is because I feel like we, even playing that, not at our best, we could have done a bit better, couldn't we? I think with a bit more pressure in some moments, especially with some of the players that came off from their side, it felt like we could have done a bit more. But obviously we'll take the point, even as it was, at the end of the game they had a good chance, and then obviously they cried about that foul that was given on Kivior, and on the duel between Kivior and Soboslai. Now, I'm not really sure how that's not a foul, but the entire Arsenal fandom on Twitter seemed to be crying about that. But that's what they usually do anyways. So let's discuss our performance. Spencer, would you agree that it wasn't necessarily the best game that we've played? Maybe not a top performance. The result was good, but it still kind of left you wanting more.
Yeah, I think that's really well put. It was fine. It was good enough. Also, we played. I think you said it. I think it's probably. I agree. It's the best opponent that we played this season. So any mistakes that you do make will be much more likely to be compounded because a better team will take advantage of it. So I think the fact that we got a point away at Arsenal is optimistic. So the result is optimistic, but the performance did, I think, leave a lot to be desired. For me, it kind of showed like a big game like this kind of shows like where the squad is in terms of where priorities need to be in terms of bringing in new signings. And I see the chat talking about it, but I think Robertson, he might be starting to be over the hill. I think this cemented for me the fact that we need to bring in a new left back at some point very soon. I think that's probably the weakest point in the squad. Not to say that Robertson can't improve, but to me, it seems more like it's a fitness and like a physicality type of an issue, something that goes with age, not something that is going to be recovered very easily. So that was a big takeaway for me. The other big one in terms of just the game itself, you play a big game. Virgil van Dijk plays a very big game himself. I know we're always discussing who should be getting the contract renewals and how we should be prioritizing that. But for me, this, I mean, cemented that he should still be the number one priority to be resigning. He is the rock at the back. If not for him, like goal aside, he was by far our best defender, and he's the most consistent player probably on the pitch for either team. I'm pretty sure we don't come away with the point if he's not playing. I think prioritizing his resigning just became that much more crucial.
Yeah, and it didn't. It looked like that, especially when looking at the score sheet as well. Didn't it? It's like the goals that were scored obviously by him, and then Mo Salah, and then you look at the game, and it feels like if you want to highlight someone's performances, it's going to be Van Dijk, it's going to be Trent, and then obviously Salah at the end of the game, who maybe didn't have that good of a first half, but then kind of grew more into it. Yeah, and that's kind of the thing with having someone like Trent. I feel like that second goal doesn't happen without that pass over the top. It was the kind of the thing that we needed, because it looked like we were having trouble breaking that low block. Sorry, I have a bit of a cold and apparently I can't get my words out, but I'm gonna try my best. Anyways, yeah, that's how I feel. It's obviously it's good to get a point, but as you said, Spencer, I feel like it was kind of the same for me. I was waiting to see, can we have a go? And it looked like we were. I'm not sure, and that's here's the thing. I'm not sure if we were just cautious or if that's all we could do yesterday, which is kind of a question that we're probably going to see answered during the season. Now, I'm not really sure. See, I am the kind of person who doesn't want to get. Yeah, thank you, Richard. We'll do. Kind of have to, I guess. Didn't have anything. I mean, I'm what's the word, like whenever I get a cold, I just don't want to get any sort of tea and medicine. I'm just waiting for my body to do the trick, but I'm gonna have to speed it up away or another. I think I don't want to be the thing that I was saying is I don't want to be the type of person to be extremely reactionary, because that's kind of a thing that I hate now about modern football. Is everyone on Twitter saying this player needs to go after one bad performance, and it's kind of like I've gotten over it at this point. It's extremely annoying, and that's why yesterday, when I saw people have a go at Robbo, I felt like it was maybe at times it was a bit too much. But then, to be honest, Carter, Robbo's been criticized since last season as well, and it looks like it's a constant thing now where you don't know if he's going to turn up into one of these big games, and that's a worry. So, your thoughts on the game, your thoughts on Robbo and Trent, on everything that's been discussed?
I think I actually can not have a go at Robertson, but I've said for a while on here, I think the last 2 seasons, I don't think he's been at the level. I think he's regressing. I think he does the really big stuff, like the stuff that looks cool and certain things really well, but the little things I think has slowly got worse and worse. I think himself in the build-up, I think his defensive decision making, I think his positioning. Yeah, he's sometimes going to clear the ball off the line, or he's going to beat a player and put a really good cross in. But those are 1 or 2 moments. I think his sustained performance over the 90 minutes, the stuff that you don't really remember or see, has got significantly worse. So I am in agreement. I think a left back needs to be signed. And I think the issue is, I can't remember how much Robbo's on, but if we sign a left back, we're signing them to start. And does that mean Robbo's on 100 and something thousand pounds a week on the bench? So that's a bit of an issue for me. But I think, and it kind of aligns with what Spencer says, I think Van Dijk has to be number one for the contract thing, because him and Konate are just unbelievable. Like, players have no time. They're not quicker than them. They're not stronger than them. They're not bigger than them. I think they really do just dominate. And I think they are kind of like a perfect pair, especially as Van Dijk gets older. Konate covers for anything that's going to happen with him getting older. But I think Trent is the second most important, because it was, I don't know if you guys heard it on the commentary. I don't know if you obviously was on Sky Sports, because you guys may be in different places. But Gary Neville was like, oh, Trent's passing has been off. It's not been very good today. And then about 10 seconds later, unbelievable ball over the top. And that's what Trent's given us. Trent gave the long ball to Salah when Salah went past Zinchenko. Trent is so key when we can't dominate the midfield, because I think their team physically was a lot better than ours. So we couldn't really, all the second balls, all the time it went up, I feel like Arsenal did win those more. So I think sometimes when you can't play through them, and sometimes when you go long from the goal kicks, it doesn't work. Sometimes Trent can just get us out of jail completely, even if you haven't played well, because but all the great passes, most of them don't play right back, so they're not in that position to play a pass like that. So I think we have to keep him, and I think he's shown once again why he is kind of our X factor. No one else has this guy. Like Saka today, Salah could do what Saka did, but I don't think any other player on the pitch could do what Trent did. So I think we've got to keep him, and I was quite impressed. I think defensively as well, he was really good. I think obviously Konate helped at times, and sometimes Konate would go out to the man, but I thought Trent was really good defensively as well.
Well, first of all, the thing that I want to start with is I'm one of the fortunate ones that didn't have to go through the Gary Neville commentary. I've seen stuff on Twitter, and usually, yeah, it's like every single game I read about some of the things he says, and it's just, of course, but it's obviously great tactical insight from a mind such as Gary Neville's. Always great to hear that input. And yeah, it's basically kind of what you said. It's Trent is that kind of a player that can create something when you need it most, and that's kind of the thing. When you have numbers close to De Bruyne's, who's considered now, he was in a conversation about the best midfielder to ever play in the Prem, and now Trent has numbers that are close to him while playing at right back. It's like, as we've discussed, it's the lack of respect for someone like Trent, but it's when you fully appreciate him and you can have kind of keep things in a perspective. Having someone like that at right back is, something that you can't take for granted. Obviously, as people have said in the chat before, it looks like, it's we're getting more nervous as time goes by. You just don't know what's going to happen. You kind of read contradicting reports every day, and it's just, we're going to have to wait and see probably on it. Yeah. I wouldn't really necessarily want to focus too much on this one. Like, I get, maybe if this happens, it's going to be really funny, because probably all we're going to hear is Amorim rejected Liverpool to join Man United, which, that's kind of how it goes on Twitter, which is why no one is really on Twitter that much anymore, I guess. But that's another conversation entirely. So yeah, Spencer, you've already touched on that when you've mentioned Van Dijk as probably the best player on the pitch. I want to maybe hear your thoughts a bit more on that. If you can go a bit more in depth on it, on who do you think had good performances, who do you think we were let down by, maybe outside of Robertson, because that seems to be the number one target in these conversations now, but well, for good reason indeed.
Yeah, and real quick, the chat is talking about it. I just want to spend 10 seconds on Amorim if he does go to United. I think that's great for everybody that's not United, because he plays a 3 at the back, and that takes an extra long time to get adapted to, and they're just not going to have the patience to do that. So I don't think he will succeed there. So I'm very excited for him to join United. Not because he's not a good manager, but because I don't think they'll give him the time to succeed. So I'm excited if that is the case. In terms of the game, I was impressed with Darwin Nunez. The effort that he puts in off the ball. I want to say he was like second or third on the team in terms of duels. He didn't have a great success rate, but the volume of duels was very high, which is not something that's common out of a forward. So his off the ball work always impresses me. I don't even think he registered a shot, but his work off the ball, and then the assist, obviously, he impressed me quite a bit. I don't think it's going to be too much of a fall off, if any at all, with Jota out injured. So that was a promising thing for me. Van Dijk, the reason why he's so like important to me, and I should have checked the stats on this. I hope I'm not going to misspeak, but his aerial ability, his and Konate's, it's something that having an aerial presence in the middle of the park, whether that be at defense or as a center defensive midfielder, that's like one of the most key things for like the really good teams. They have players that just win the 50-50 balls that are in the air all of the time, and it retains or gains possession. That's something that Van Dijk and Konate both have, which is just a massive advantage that Liverpool gets in having both of those players on the pitch at the same time. Plus, their ball playing abilities, the sides that they play on, the speed and power that they have, they complement each other so well. So they both impressed me. I guess probably the last play I'd want to speak on was Curtis Jones. I know he played 90 minutes. I don't want to say he was invisible, but it definitely was not the performance like what we had the last time when he was out. I know it was a different position. It wasn't like the deep lying one, or more like a 6 rather than an 8. He kind of played like the McAllister type role the time before this, and this time he was a bit further forward, but was not particularly impressed with him today. It could have just been that it was a better opponent. Marino and I guess Partey played right back, but Marino and Rice are pretty physical midfielders. That's not probably the easiest thing to work into. I don't think he was given much space, so he disappointed me a little bit, but it's still a bit promising with him. I'm definitely not disappointed in him in general. He was just a one player that the fact that I didn't see him a ton, or I don't have many memories of things that he did that registered as positive or negative, especially playing in the middle of the park, that was a bit disappointing for me.
Yeah, I think it's been especially until the end of the game. If you take away the last 15, it would have been pretty hard to name someone who impressed. I feel like it seemed like everyone had a day off, and that's what was especially disappointing, because this was the time not to have a day off, because it just seemed like, even though Arsenal were there for the taking, it still felt like they were better than us at the end of the game when the final whistle blown. So yeah. Carter, thoughts on man of the match and who impressed yesterday?
I'm actually, so I watched the game today because I was at work and I went through it, and I had seen people talking about Jones. So I had my eye on him and I had my eye on McAllister when I was sort of watching. And I objectively think, I think some people on the team, like Nunes, I think he gets overly criticized because he tries stuff and he gets himself in positions, which is the hardest thing to do, to be a risk taker, to try things. But I actually think when I watch the game, I feel like, one, Jones isn't a 10. Like, he's not a 10. He's not really a creative passer. He can dribble, he can shoot a bit, but I think he needs to play further back. And I actually objectively thought, out of the midfield, thought Grav was all right, but I actually thought Jones just kept us ticking. Jones and Grav just kept it, moved it. Jones constantly was sort of coming. He didn't do anything with it, but you don't need every player to be playing on the half turn and trying to beat two players, and especially with Trent on his side, more or less. There was quite a few times where Trent was giving the ball away, like trying long passes, it felt like. And I think he actually balanced it out quite well. I think for me, I think Nunes and maybe Kanate and Van Dijk were probably the three best for me. I think they were physically imposing. I think Nunes at least put himself about. He at least gave people sort of angles and options to go. I think Salah was quiet. I think the two I wasn't super keen on was, I thought Szoboszlai should have definitely started over McAllister. I think that was he just can't get about as well as other players. And I think in a game like that, it's about getting the second balls. And I think the big issue for me was Diaz and Gakpo, which we can talk about later. But I just think that was against Thomas Partey, right back. So I think it was a bit funny. It's just, I didn't really, when I finished watching, I didn't really have a man of the match. So I'm kind of like scrambling a bit. But yeah, I don't know. It's just a really weird performance.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was hinting at, a bit earlier on when I said, like, if it weren't for the last 15, I think we can really have a name, or maybe like, a definitive answer on this. It feels like that's exactly what I was thinking, and that's why I said, I started off the stream with the fact that I was being conflicted yesterday. It seems like the result was good. We could have done more, but then we were not on our best day, and it just, it was weird, because then it kind of, the thing that frustrates me most is that we didn't have more of a go at the end of the game, because they were left without Timber, without Gabriel on the pitch. They were playing with Luis Skelly and then Kivior at center back, and it felt like we could have maybe try and exploit that a bit more. But then when you also look at it, we were caught out a few times on a counter, which was surprising to see, because you'd think that with them playing, with these certain players, we'd have a bit more, we would be a bit more mature. Yeah, it didn't look, our defense has been, praised this season, and obviously for good reason most of the time. But yesterday was, now, I don't know if you agree with me or not, but it looked a bit shaky at times, especially when they were on the counter. It felt like they were bypassing our midfield with a bit more ease. It looked like, Trossard was, I remember in the first half, in the space of 2 minutes, he kind of had two balls that kind of took out three of our players, which was, positionally, it was shocking, really, to see. But, at the end of the day, we take the point, and then we'll see how this goes and how we can improve. Before moving on, the one thing that I wanted to talk about is, you kind of, Carter, you kind of touched on it a bit earlier when you talked about Tsimikas and Robertson and how we need to sign a left back. Tsimikas yesterday looked like he had a really good cameo when he came on, especially with Saka being, his legs being gone at that time. Didn't have to worry that much about the defense, and he kind of just came forward a lot, and he looked great, created a bit more danger, put a bit more speed on that ball. The thing is, and the thing that kind of made me think about it, and I'm kind of curious to hear about your guys' opinion there in the chat as well, is Liverpool. I feel like the more we kind of discuss it and the more we think about it, we've been we haven't really been proactive with our transfers in the past few seasons. It seemed like whenever we said before the 2021 season, we said that we might have a problem at center back. We didn't sign any, and then we all know what happened. We almost missed on top four. This season, like two years ago, or was last season, last summer, I think, we were talking about how we need a DM. Didn't sign a DM, and then obviously we did miss on top four. And now it feels like at the beginning of the season we have a bit of a talk. We had, I think, more talks actually on the fact that we would need a left back, and that hasn't happened. And it looks like it's going to be a problem this season. And again, we're going to fix it in the summer after we have already, we've already had proof that it's been a bit of a problem. So Spencer, whenever we have this conversation, I do want to mention that I wouldn't like any Saudi owners. I think you kind of have to take, the good and the bad. And I think I'm not necessarily one of the fans to, go onto Twitter and just say FSG out on pretty much every chance that they get. However, have our transfers been a bit reactionary in the past few seasons? And is that disappointing for you?
I don't know which one to go with, the FSG stuff or just the transfer talk in general.
Together, I guess.
Yeah. I would say, I mean, just on FSG, like if you want them out, and this isn't just because they're an American back group and I'm American, that has nothing to do with this, but I'm generally in favor of them because the alternative is, like you said, it's Saudi owners or it's like ethically pretty not good money. Is that really what you want to be? What we like the disdain that we have for Manchester City, what they became so quickly, what Chelsea became when they had a Russian owner. Is that really what you want for Liverpool Football Club? Because that is the only way to like really spend all of the money in the world. I don't want that. I don't necessarily agree with everything that FSG has done, but I'm definitely not FSG out. In terms of just the transfers and everything, yeah. I mean, if you are happy with what we've done in the market recently, I'd say your expectations are too low for a club the size that we are, at least the past couple of seasons. Earlier on in the Klopp tenure, we were signing like the players that we needed to, as like in the windows that we needed them. We needed a defensive midfielder. We went and signed Fabinho. We needed a center back. We went and spent big on Van Dijk. We needed, a number one between the sticks, and we went and got Allison. We spent big, not like exorbitant amounts of money, but like made big, impactful signings in the windows that we needed them. And that doesn't seem to be the case. Like, I guess the Zubamendi one, for an example, I guess he did reject us, and maybe we didn't have a plan B, or maybe we thought Gravenberch was plan B. But I feel like previous seasons, transfer windows, like 5-6 years ago, we would have had plans B and C, and we would have brought somebody in. So I do have to say, on the balance of everything, I am pretty disappointed in the way transfers have gone. But of course, it is the new regime's first window, and everybody's kind of getting situated. There's plenty of time to still to make changes. There's plenty of time for changes to happen, and once they understand really what Slot wants, and he has his voice, and it's more established, I could see things changing. Maybe that's just hopium, but I can see that being the case.
Yeah, I think a good message on that was in the summer when we've seen that Slot was going to be our head coach and not our manager, and it looked like, okay, now with Edwards coming back, and obviously with Hughes being sorry, that's the dog. It might be a bit too loud. I don't know. Being signed by the club, it looked like the power was going to be given to them, right? So which isn't necessarily a bad thing, because while Jurgen was obviously a huge manager for our club, it looked like when he was given a bit more power on on the players that we sign, it didn't go as well as it did in the past when he wasn't necessarily in that role. So yeah, Yeah, basically. Well, it's a Labrador. So he's kind of large. But yes, moving on. Carter, sorry. Spencer kind of made a good point. So when we needed to kind of get the players that we needed, the big guns 5 6 years ago, I think we kind of did that. But ever since then, it looked like especially in like the last 4 seasons, I say, like the season that we won the title onwards, it looked like whenever we needed to reinforce the squad, we just didn't do it at the right time.
I think just on the ownership from before, there is one person I can think of, and he is American, and I don't think he is too ethically questionable, and that's Steve Ballmer. I would definitely take him. I mean, he seems like a cool guy. But then for us, I think the big word I would use is morale. Like, I think no matter how, like, and people will disagree with me, objectively, United squad of players is much better than a lot of the teams that are above them. If you look at every single player, you go, this player's good, this player's good. But having a strong morale and a strong like chemistry and everything is really important. And the way I looked at it is this regime didn't have time to line things up. And if you look, like, I think one of the worst decisions under Klopp was giving Tsimikas an extension, because he's never been starter level. He will never be starter level. Like, he should have been, like Minamino, bought on and you hopefully sell on for a profit. I think we have players that we could sell, and I'm not afraid. Ultimately, I would sell possibly any player apart from maybe Trent if money came in. And because I think so many times, so many big transfers don't work out. Like, if we're being honest, would you rather have 100 million for McAllister, 80 million for McAllister, or would you rather have two new 45 million pound midfielders? Like, we could then get, if you can always find good players for lower amounts of money. So I think I'm very comfortable, because I think we will have to sometimes sell to spend ludicrously big. And I think a big issue is that they imagine if they said to Joe Gomez, that I think they gave everyone the preseason, they let the manager have a look, they let the new sort of board member people have a look, and then they said, this is our plan. I think they looked at players and they weren't going to sell anyone until they bought the players, I think, because they don't want to leave themselves like in a dangerous position. But imagine if they just said at the start of the year, yeah, Kostas Tsimikas, Joe Gomez, even if they said, I don't think they would say it to Nunes, but they say it to Nunes and Endo, you four are never going to play another game. You're going to train with the under 18s, like Chelsea do, like they do with all their players, and say, either you train here or you're not going to play. So then what happens? And then all Van Dijk and Salah and all those players who've got such a strong bond because of Klopp and all the seasons they've been together, how is that going to make them feel? How is this going to go? Are they all going to turn on the manager? Are they not going to have trust in the people above them? I think this summer was a really unenviable task. And I think Slot, they hit the nail on the head. I think Chiesa, yes, he's been injured, but for what, £12 million, you got a Champions League standard player who's probably better than Cody Gakpo. And I think signing Mamadou Dashvili, I think yes, maybe he's not as good with the ball at his feet, but oh my God, does he save the ball? Like, he makes saves that probably maybe only Alisson and like Prime De Gea look like they can make. Like, he actually makes ridiculous saves. So I think that was a good signing. And I think it's been all right. And I think the contract stuff is hard. But yeah, I think I'm competent with FSG as long as we make the difficult decisions and sell Endo and Tsimikas in the summer and maybe Gakpo.
Okay, well, it could have been a great point, but then at the end there you just had to do it. Yeah, well, it looked like well, before I'm gonna take the comments, yeah, that's kind of the thing that I said. I think, judging by what's out there, I think I'm okay with having FSG as our owners. I think we could do a lot worse, and it's just too much of a gamble to hope for a better owner. So for better owners, I mean, so I'm content with FSG at the moment. Judging from previous seasons, I would say no. I just don't see how. I don't see where, because we do have depth in the attack. Gravenberch has worked amazingly, which they will take that as a reason not to get another DM or another midfielder or whatever. And then we also, Robbo can still do a job on his day. Tsimikas can still kind of, be okay on his day as well, which is kind of why I don't think we will sign anyone in January. And yeah, as you said, Carter, I think we do the signings that we've made. Yeah, they're a bit underrated. I would say I think Mamardashvili is an amazing goalkeeper, and I think the thing that I said with Allison as well, for me, why Allison is the best keeper in the world is he doesn't need to have all those otherworldly saves where he just like jumps 7 feet in the air or something like that. He just has the awareness and the positioning that's basically out of this world. He just almost like he knows where the ball is going to go to, and he just doesn't need to, and that's why he can catch so many difficult balls. Well, the thing, yeah, it's good to kind of have a constructive conversation here. So if people, I can definitely see how someone's not necessarily happy with FSG. My point was, if you look at what's out there, you look at United, you look at Chelsea, you look at City, you look at Newcastle, even Arsenal for a long time, it looked like I'm not sure. I'm not sure on how much better we can do, right? And that's kind of the thing. Well, it's good, obviously. As I said, everyone can have their opinions, and there's no need to kind of be disrespectful about that, I guess. Yeah. Well, see, this is another good point. And as we've said, I think at this point we would have wanted this to be done with. But obviously, still we're still gonna have to wait for news on that. Well, I think we kind of discussed the Arsenal game enough. Good point. We need to kind of move on now, and obviously get to keep getting the wins and keep going under the radar for most of the time. We are going to have another game though in 2 days time. 2 days, right? Is in Wednesday, I believe, if I'm correct. Just let me double check that. Yeah, on Wednesday. Yeah, obviously. Well, that's what we're going to get into then just now. For me, Spencer, as I said at the beginning of the stream, and Carter, I do agree with the fact that Chiesa is an amazing signing for the money that we spent. The problem is, if we're not going to see enough of him, then it's still underwhelming, even if we didn't really pay that much money on him, because we kind of know that on his day the things that he can do, and it's just we'd want to see that obviously with him at Liverpool. Sorry. So hopefully we're going to see him on Wednesday. I'm still not sure on if anyone in the chat or if anyone on the you lads has any sort of info on Chiesa, that would be appreciated. Spencer, now we've won the EFL Cup now twice in the last few seasons, and it's been a great run on pretty much every time. The Chelsea final and the Chelsea finals. Sorry, both of them, because that's who we beat in both. Those were great runs on pretty much every season. It's obviously not a trophy that we're going to say that's the priority at the beginning of the season, but if you kind of can get into the latter stages by using players that don't really play that much now, we might still have a go. So on Wednesday, who would you play? Who would you rest? Me personally, I would want to see Mo Salah or Trent on that pitch, or Van Dijk for that matter.
Yeah, I would think resting pretty much everybody is probably the best way to do it. So it's tricky because before the past couple of seasons when we've won the trophy, and those were some of the most exciting moments of the recent seasons, I was always very much just trot out the youth academy. And like, if you win a couple games, then once you get later on, then you can start to play, like take it more seriously if you get to a later stage. But it's not a high profile enough trophy to actually prioritize or risk minutes, player injuries. And just with how many games that teams have to play now, you kind of have to deprioritize some. I think that applies to this year. I think considering us anything less than maybe not the front runners, but one of the top two or three to win the Premier League, we are one of two, I think, that are still undefeated or that have won every game in the Champions League. Like, we are one of the best sides in Europe right now. This isn't a situation like when Klopp came in where we were closer to mid-table than we were to competing for top four. And a trophy like this could actually spark some interest and do some things for the club morale. We've jumped from Klopp to Slot and effectively haven't skipped a beat. I think that same mentality should still apply here to where we're still prioritizing the biggest competitions that we have a very good chance. Well, maybe not a very good chance, that we have every chance to win as anybody else that's competing in them. So I guess picking out names, I think the ones that you said, I wouldn't want to see in there. I think Gravenberch probably needs some rotation. I think it'd be good to see Simicast get 90 minutes at left back. I mean, I know the conversation, especially for me so far during this stream, but it sounds like in the comments, and it's just it's on top of everybody's mind. If Robertson is over the hill, could we see Simicast be the first choice left back at some point later in the year? If so, I'd like to see him play 90 minutes, even if it is a cup game, just to get eyes on him. But yeah, that's my thoughts is don't prioritize the EFL until you get later on and you know you have a chance to win it. Prioritize the big games that matter more, and that, given the strength of our squad, we have every chance to win.
Yeah. Jesus. Okay. Yeah. I do. The thing with Tsimikas and Robo, I feel like obviously I would want to see Tsimikas play on Wednesday. I think, and in the sense that if we want to, discuss the possibility of him being the starter, then we kind of have to look at, or me personally, the first thing that came to mind was defensively. Obviously, Tsimikas is not as good as Robertson. I still feel like Robo is a better defender at the moment. However, it feels like Robo's legs are slowly starting to give out. And that's another conversation again. A thing that you kind of have to think about is Robo going to be able to play 90 minutes every 2-3 days? No. So you're going to have to play Tsimikas a lot more than you probably would want. So yeah. Yeah, I think that was kind of that's definitive enough for me now. It's like everyone in the chat keeps telling me to drink tea. Man, sorry. I'm trying my best to kind of keep it together. So yeah, I kind of feel at the moment I still obviously have Robertson as our starting left back, but it's a lot closer than it used to be. And I know at the beginning of the season people were still discussing the possibility of Tsimikas being a bit more suited. And people were actually expecting us to start with Tsimikas when the season started. But then, obviously it didn't happen that way. Carter, well, going back to the original question on the first 11 that you want to see on Wednesday, who would you start? Who would you rest? And hopefully we're going to see a first Chiesa goal. Now, I'm not really sure Brighton is going to be, I think it's the closest you can bring him to home because it's, near the sea and all that, but it's probably going to be a little colder than what he's used to.
I honestly, I haven't really seen anything, but I'd be shocked if Chiesa plays in the next 2 or 3 weeks. I think they're almost going to mini preseason him because I think the big thing he said, he's not caught up to the intensity. And we saw Gravenberch last year. It took him, he had to wait until the preseason to really kick on this year. And I think, yes, Chiesa is older, but I think they will look at it and go, we'll just get him 100% up to speed. I think for me, I think I would if they were weaker opposition, I would have played Jaros. But I actually think we need to give. I think I'd rather try and put more chips towards the League Cup than the FA Cup because the FA Cup is running more at the crunch end, whereas this we can kind of get in and out quite early and maybe just have the Champions League and the league towards the end. I think I'd go Kelleher, I'd go Bradley, I'd go Gomez, but it's difficult because Brighton are very good, and it's the fact of you, especially attacking wise, you don't want to change too much. So, I think I'd go Quinso, Gomez, Costas. I think in an ideal world, I'd like to see. I think it's just too many changes. I think I'd do Endo, Jones, and Szoboszlai. I would have liked to see Tyler Morton play, but I feel like it's just a fantasy at this point. Like, is he ever going to play like more than 10 minutes? I think I would then go Diaz, Nunes, Gakpo as the front three. And I just think just try and win the game and then get Nunes off, and then maybe get some of the other guys off and get maybe one or two younger players minutes. But I think we can still field a good side. I just think it's a bit it's not exactly what you'd want. Like I think we are like Elliot and Chiesa would have really helped sort of fill out some of the gaps. Like we would have had a more natural right winger, or we could have played one of them into 10, or we could have like. I do feel like Nunes right now is a bit risky because we only really have one striker. So it is like, are we just going to play him until he gets injured and then Jota gets injured again, and then where are we? So I think it's interesting for Slot what he's going to have to decide. But to that comment, I think Nioni is just he's too young to play in the midfield, and you can't make that many changes because Brighton, I don't think will make that many. Like Brighton will kind of have most of their players like who are regulars, so they'll be quite well drilled, and we've seen that they can play well. So we definitely shouldn't underestimate them.
Yeah, I'm kind of somewhere in between. Well, before getting to that, I don't want to sound like a smartass, but the Latin blood in me tells me to tell you, Carter, to just stop saying Chiesa, right? So just okay, go with that. Okay, just it's the Latin blood. It's like being in the Roman and speaking a Romance language natively kind of makes me just go like that every single time. It's just a little tick of mine there. Good to know we kind of fix that moving forward. But yes.
How do I say it again?
Chiesa.
Chiesa or Chiesa?
No, okay, good. Say it
Chiesa,
again.
no.
Yeah. Oh, good. Okay. Well, that was a good. No pasta for you, Carter. See, yeah, like that was a big no. You just you're gonna go in Italy, put some ketchup on your pizza, and that's gonna be the end of you. You're not gonna step foot in Italy anymore. But yes, going back to the football. I'm kind of somewhere in between, in the sense that I would want to see someone like Morton, someone like Jarosz play the full 90. But the thing is with Brighton, they're a side that can put you under pressure. We've seen that, when they've played Chelsea at the Stamford Bridge. I think that was kind of the best example that they are really good in attack when they on their day. Obviously, their defense is a shit show most of the time still, but on their day, they can do damage. And it looks like my mind just kind of goes to that. We were bit iffy against Arsenal 2 days ago, yesterday even, and I kind of feel like if Brighton, get on that, get the crowd involved, and there's a lot of youngsters for us on the pitch, it looks like it might, they might create a bit more problems that we want them to. But obviously, at the end of the day, it's the EFL Cup. Obviously, not that big of a game, so I'm kind of like that. I'm not sure. I'm gonna trust on Slot to see what he does. I do think that we're not gonna see someone like Trainioni, or probably not even Jarosz play. But we're gonna have to wait and see. Well, thanks to everyone in the chat. Thanks to Spencer, to Carter. We're gonna end tonight's live stream here. I'm gonna make some hot tea, or maybe not that hot. I've heard that's not necessarily the best thing when you have a cold. Chiesa one more time, Carter. And to everyone in the chat, to everyone here, thanks very much for hopping on, for leaving your comments here, for leaving your likes, subscribing to the channel. Obviously, much appreciated. 7:30 p.m. UK time every day, except for Wednesday and Saturday. We're gonna stream as well after the games. Thanks everyone in the chat once again, and up until tomorrow, up the Reds.